You know, if you accidentally put your hand on a hot stove, every single evolutionary instinct in your body just screams at you to pull it away, like immediately.
Oh, absolutely. You don't pause to, weigh the pros and cons.
Right, you don't consult the rational part of your brain at all. Your nervous system just violently jerks your hand back to save you from severe tissue damage.
It is a beautifully efficient system, really. Millions of years of hardwired survival programming that just bypasses your conscious thought entirely. I mean, we are designed to avoid pain at all costs.
And to seek comfort. But imagine a scenario where that exact survival mechanism, like pulling your hand away from the pain, is actually the very thing that destroys you.
That's a deeply unsettling thought experiment.
It is, right. Imagine an environment where surviving requires you to completely override that millions of years old instinct, press your hand down on the heat, and just sit with the excruciating discomfort.
Because you're asking someone to fight their own biology. You're asking them to fight human nature itself.
And that complete inversion of our natural instincts, well, that is exactly what we are exploring today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
We've framed this conversation specifically for you, the learner out there who just loves unpacking the psychological why behind human behavior.
Yeah, the real underlying mechanisms.
Exactly. So we're pulling insights today from the audiobook and the transcript of Best Loser Wins by Tom Hugard. And our mission today is not to give you some step-by-step financial trading manual.
No, we definitely aren't here to talk about getting rich quick or anything like that.
Far from it. We are dissecting a brutal, highly counterintuitive truth. We're looking at why 90% of smart, rational, well-adjusted people just fail in high-stakes, dynamic environments.
90%. I mean, that number alone is staggering.
It's huge. And we're going to see how mastering the psychological art of losing, like learning how to be an exceptional loser, is actually the ultimate secret to success.
Which sounds completely backward, I know.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand the solution, we first have to dismantle the most common excuse people use when they fail at something difficult.
They blame their tools.
Always. People almost always blame their tools.
Right. They blame a lack of information or bad software or just not having the right resources.
But the source material highlights this fascinating piece of European financial regulation that completely shatters that excuse.
Oh, yeah. The
That-
transparency laws.
Yeah. European regulators actually forced financial brokers to prominently post the failure rates of their retail clients right there on their websites.
Because the assumption was that the brokers were somehow cheating the clients.
Yes.
Or that high fees were the problem.
Exactly. But then the numbers came back, and across the board, 70 to 90% of retail clients lose money.
It's an astronomical failure rate.
And it happens regardless of which broker they use. It's wild.
What's fascinating here is the historical context of that failure rate. Because, I mean, we are currently living in an era with the greatest, most democratized access to technology in human history.
Yeah, the friction is basically gone.
Totally.
Hmm.
To give you a sense of scale, the source notes that back in 1999, the spread, which is basically the transaction cost or the friction of making a trade for the German DAX index, was about 8 points.
8 points. Oh,
Today, because of technological efficiency, it is 0.9 points. It's virtually nothing.
Hmm.
Modern traders have access to, like, institutional level charting software right on their phones.
right. And instant global news feeds, unlimited educational resources, you name it.
So the friction is gone, the tools are flawless, and yet that 90% failure rate hasn't budged an inch in decades.
It completely destroys the illusion that more knowledge equals better results.
It really does.
There's actually a massive academic study mentioned in the text that proves this point beautifully, I think. Researchers decided to analyze something called Japanese candlesticks.
Oh, the chart patterns.
Yeah. For those listening who don't know, these are very popular visual chart patterns that traders swear by to predict market movements. They have these dramatic names like the shooting star or the hammer, based on the shape the data makes on the screen.
And humans are fundamentally pattern-seeking machines. We suffer from pareidolia,
Pareidolia, right, seeing faces and things.
Exactly. We see faces in the clouds, and we see predictable futures in random squiggles on a chart. It just gives us a sense of control.
Exactly. So these researchers took over 6 decades of historical data from the S&P 500 to see if these widely trusted shapes actually predicted anything.
60 years of data.
60 years of pure market data, and they found that these patterns offer almost zero forecasting reliability. None.
Wow, zero.
Mathematically, staring at a shooting star pattern is essentially no better than flipping a coin. Hugard uses a brilliant analogy here. He says that reading a book on technical chart analysis to become a professional trader is like reading an instructional manual on the physics of tennis and then expecting to walk onto a court and beat Rafael Nadal.
Yeah, having a top-tier Wilson Pro racket in your hand does not magically give you the muscle memory of Roger Federer.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the failure rate just isn't a math problem. It's not a technology problem at all. If the tools are mathematically perfect and the transaction costs are basically zero, but people are still failing at the exact same rate, the fatal flaw is human behavior.
The default psychological settings?
Right. The default settings of a normal, well-adjusted person actively betray them in a high-stakes environment.
Okay, wait, I have to push back here because everything you're saying goes against the most universally accepted financial advice on the planet.
How so?
Well, even Warren Buffett says to be greedy when others are fearful. The whole point of investing is to buy low and sell high. So if I'm looking at an asset and its price is dropping aggressively, isn't that essentially a bargain? It seems entirely rational and logical to buy it.
It seems rational because you are applying the logic of a grocery store to a dynamic, leveraged environment.
Grocery store.
Yeah, this is a cognitive trap Hugard refers to as the supermarket mentality.
Okay, I like that.
Think about your behavior in a grocery store. If you walk down the aisle and see your favorite brand of toilet paper on sale at a 50% discount, what do?
I mean, I am loading up the cart. I'm buying enough for the entire year because I know it's a steal.
Precisely. And that is a highly rational decision because toilet paper has intrinsic, unchanging utility. Its value to you does not change based on the price.
Right, it's still toilet paper.
Exactly. Buying it at a deep discount triggers a massive pleasure response in your brain's reward center. You outsmarted the store. But in a dynamic financial market, the concepts of cheap and expensive are purely emotional constructs.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they don't actually exist. The market price is simply the exact point where buyers and sellers agree in that given millisecond. If a stock is trading at a 50% discount compared to last month, it is not on sale.
Oh, it's not a bargain.
No. It usually means something is fundamentally structurally broken within the company.
Ah. So applying Warren Buffett's philosophy of holding intrinsic value over decades doesn't work when you are actively trading a dynamic, constantly moving environment. The market isn't giving you a discount as a favor.
Right. The market has inertia. When something is falling, it tends to keep falling until an overwhelming force stops it. But our normal brains suffer from anchoring bias.
We anchor to the old price.
Exactly. We remember that the stock used to be $100. So when it hits $50, our brain anchors to that old price and tells us we're getting a bargain. We try to catch a falling knife.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
The source text gives two deeply unsettling examples of this cognitive trap. The first is Marconi stock back in the early 2000s.
Oh, yeah. Which was a massive telecommunications company, right?
Yes, a titan of the industry. The stock had fallen from 1,200 pence down to 450. Retail investors, using that grocery store logic, thought it was the bargain of the century.
I thought they were buying half-price toilet paper.
Exactly. They poured money into it.
Yeah.
Then it fell to 32 pence. People kept buying it, averaging down, absolutely convinced it couldn't possibly drop any lower.
But it did.
It eventually went to absolute zero. Every single person who bought the quote-unquote bargain was wiped out.
Man. And the exact same tragedy played out with Northern Rock Bank during the 2008 financial crisis.
Yes, same pattern.
Retail investors treated a collapsing financial institution like it was half-priced dish soap. The stock was in a death spiral, but everyday people kept throwing their life savings at it because their brains perceived it as cheap.
They applied consumer logic to a ruthless environment that does not care about moral value or intrinsic fairness.
It just doesn't care.
When you rely on normal consumer instincts, your brain actively sabotages your financial survival.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because it's not just a misunderstanding of what constitutes a bargain. The source material dives deep into the actual neuroscience of how human beings process winning and losing.
The literal brain chemistry of it.
Right. Like, why is it so incredibly hard for us to just look at a bad situation, realize we are wrong, and walk away? There is a monumental piece of research we need to look at by a data analyst named David Rodriguez.
This study is incredible.
He analyzed 43 million foreign exchange trades executed by 25,000 everyday retail traders.
A sample size of 43 million trades is staggering. that completely eliminates any statistical anomalies or, streaks of bad luck. It gives us a pure, unadulterated look at human nature at scale.
And the data revealed something wild. The win rate for these 25,000 traders was 62%.
Meaning they were correctly predicting the market's direction more than 6 out of every 10 times.
Yes.
By all conventional logic, a 62% hit rate should make you incredibly wealthy.
But they weren't wealthy. In fact, the vast majority of them were slowly draining their accounts and going broke. Well, Rodriguez found the mathematical reason why. Their average winning trade made 43 pips. Now, for the listener, a pip is just a tiny unit of measurement used in foreign exchange to track price movement. Think of it like cents to a dollar.
Right, just a small unit.
So they made 43 units when they won, but their average losing trade lost 78 units.
Wow. They were winning more frequently, but their losses were almost double the size of their gains.
Exactly.
This perfectly quantifies the ultimate psychological inversion of the normal human brain. We are hardwired to be intensely hopeful when we are losing and intensely fearful when we are winning.
Which sounds completely backward. If I'm winning, I should feel confident. If I'm losing, I should be terrified. Why does our brain invert that reality?
It comes down to the amygdala, the primitive reptilian part of our brain responsible for processing fear and threat detection.
The lizard brain.
Right. Evolutionary biology dictates that we avoid pain. Neurological studies show that a financial loss is felt by the brain 250% more intensely than an equivalent financial gain.
250%.
Yes. Your subconscious cannot distinguish between the pain of a physical predator attacking you, the pain of a bruised ego, or the pain of clicking a button to realize a financial loss. It just registers it as severe trauma.
So when a trader is in a losing position, clicking close makes the pain permanent.
Exactly.
So instead of taking the small pain early, the brain floods them with hope, like, oh, it'll turn around, it has to bounce back.
They cling to blind hope as a psychological shield to delay the acute pain of being wrong.
But look at what happens when that exact same person is in a winning position. They see a small profit on the screen. Suddenly, they aren't hopeful anymore.
Because the amygdala registers a different threat. The threat that the market might take that profit away.
Right. The fear of missing out on the small gain overwhelms them, so they cash out immediately.
They secure a tiny dopamine hit just to relieve the anxiety of holding the position.
They cut their winners short out of fear, and they let their losers run wild out of hope.
It's tragic, really.
It is. This actually reminds me of the Dr. David Paul story from the text, which is perhaps the greatest example of how our ego hijacks our reality.
Oh, that story's brutal.
Dr. Paul was a brilliant PhD mechanical engineer, very smart, very analytical. In the 1980s, he built his own highly sophisticated proprietary forecasting models for the markets.
He'd invested massive amounts of time, intellect, and ego into these tools.
Huge ego investment. So one afternoon, his advanced models gave him a definitive signal the market was going to explode upward. Based on this, he took a massive long position. He bet heavily on the market rising.
But the market didn't rise. It immediately started dropping.
Right?
And because he is a normal human operating under the supermarket mentality, he assumed the lower price was a bargain. So he doubled down. He bought more. But the market kept falling.
I can picture the scene perfectly. Like, he is sweating, pacing his home office, calling his broker, calling his engineering friends, desperately rerunning his forecasting models.
Just scrambling.
He's doing everything in his power to rationalize why he is right and the entire global market is wrong. The cognitive dissonance is deafening.
And then his wife, who knows absolutely nothing about financial algorithms or trading models, walks into the room just to ask him a question about dinner.
Yeah.
She takes one look at his face, sees the sheer panic, and looks at the computer monitor.
And he immediately gets defensive. He points at the complex charts and starts trying to explain that the algorithms dictate a massive upward swing is imminent.
But she just points at the screen and says, but it's moving down, isn't it?
He actually tries to argue with her. He tells her she doesn't understand the nuance of the data.
I know. And she just calmly repeats, right here, right now. It is moving down, isn't it?
And that was the moment it all shattered for him. He realized in that instant that he wasn't trading the reality of the market. He was trading his own opinion.
Yep. He was throwing money into a furnace purely to protect his ego from the pain of admitting his software was wrong.
The ego will literally choose financial ruin over admitting a flaw. It's terrifying.
It really is. So if 90% of people are trapped by these normal biological imperatives, loss aversion, the supermarket mentality, ego defense, What do the incredibly rare 1% of successful people do differently?
They do the exact opposite, which requires living in a constant state of profound discomfort.
Yeah, going against every instinct.
Hugard mentions a hedge fund managed by a man named Trevor Neal, and the statistics of this fund are absolutely mind-bending. They had a hit rate of just 25%.
Meaning they were mathematically wrong on 75 out of every 100 decisions they made.
Most normal people would look at that track record and assume the fund was a spectacular failure.
Obviously.
But they were wildly, phenomenally successful.
Because they mastered the art of being the best losers.
Exactly. When they were wrong, which was most of the time, they felt zero ego. They didn't hope. They just cut the position instantly, taking a microscopic loss.
But when they were right, on those rare 25 occasions, they didn't cash out for a quick dopamine hit. They pressed their advantage. Their winning trades paid out 25 times their initial risk.
25 times.
This completely exposes the fatal flaw that destroys the normal trader, the instinct to average down.
Right, adding to a losing trade.
A normal person will hold a losing trade and buy more of it to get a better average entry price. They willingly double their risk while the market is explicitly telling them their thesis is wrong.
But if that same person has a winning trade, they would never dream of adding more money to it. They are terrified of ruining their safety buffer.
Hugard actually holds a very controversial stance on this that goes against almost all standard financial literature.
Really? Like what?
Well, most textbooks preach the importance of a risk-to-reward ratio, the idea that before you enter a trade, you should plan to risk $1 to make $2. You set a definitive profit target.
Right, that sounds pretty standard.
But Hugard refuses to use profit targets. He uses a strict stop-loss to ensure a bad trade is killed immediately, capping his downside. But he argues that setting a profit target is just a psychological pacifier.
That pacifier.
Yeah, it's a fake metric we invent to soothe our brain's anxiety about uncertainty.
Oh, I see. He poses a brilliant question here. If the market is offering you a massive runaway trend, why on earth would you limit your upside and cash out just because you hit some arbitrary pre-planned number?
That makes no sense when you think about it.
He uses a fantastic analogy from a famous Chicago pit trader named Greg Reber. Reber used to say, if you are at a casino rolling dice and you magically roll 3 sixes in a row, well, you let it ride.
The momentum is with you.
Right. But normal human behavior does the reverse. When normal people hit a winning streak, they start betting smaller amounts out of a paranoid fear that their luck is about to run out. But when they go on a losing streak, they double their bets out of desperate hope to win it all back.
So this raises an important question, though. Understanding all of this on a logical, intellectual level is relatively easy.
Sure, it makes sense when we talk about it.
But how do you actually condition your amygdala in real time? How do you physically train a human brain to press its winners, embrace the deep anxiety of risking open profits, and accept painful losses without the ego just shattering into a million pieces?
You literally have to engage in self-induced neuroplasticity. You have to reprogram the neural pathways in your brain through exposure therapy.
It sounds exhausting.
Oh, and Hugard's daily methodology for achieving this is incredibly intense. He does not wake up, look in the mirror, and recite positive affirmations. He doesn't subscribe to good vibes only. His entire morning routine is engineered around a much darker emotion.
Disgust.
Disgust.
From an evolutionary psychology standpoint, disgust is an unbelievably powerful lever for behavioral change. I mean, joy and happiness are fleeting emotions. They fade quickly.
Right.
But disgust, like the feeling of eating rotten, poisonous food, leaves a permanent, indelible scar on your neural pathways to ensure you never make that fatal mistake again.
So, before the financial markets open every single day, Hugard sits in silence at his desk and clicks through a custom PowerPoint presentation. And this presentation is entirely composed of his absolute worst, most undisciplined, reckless mistakes.
Wow. He forces himself to stare at the visual evidence of his own stupidity.
Yes. He looks at charts where he let his ego take over, where he averaged down into a loss, or where he cut a massive winner short because he was scared.
He is intentionally triggering his amygdala, flooding his system with the emotional pain of those memories. It's fascinating because the text notes that Hugard utilized this exact same concept of deep, ego-stripping disgust years prior to cure his own alcoholism.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He learned that you cannot rely on willpower. You have to break the ego down to absolute zero and associate the bad behavior with profound revulsion in order to rebuild a disciplined mind.
And he doesn't stop at disgust. He also uses visualization. but in a way that turns standard self-help advice on its head. He doesn't visualize driving a Ferrari or making
How does
millions.
he visualize?
He sits in his chair and intensely visualizes losing catastrophic sums of money.
Oh, why?
He imagines being down 78,000 pounds in a single day. He forces his body to experience the physical symptoms of that loss: the tightness in his chest, the shallow breathing, the sheer panic of financial ruin. He sits with that simulated agony until his emotional response simply burns out and goes numb.
It is a form of psychological inoculation. By visualizing the absolute worst-case scenario with such vivid intensity, he's intentionally decoupling the stimulus from the response.
So it doesn't affect him anymore.
Right. By the time the market actually opens and he takes a normal, everyday loss, the amygdala has already processed the threat. The alarm bells simply do not ring. He has rewired his brain to remain completely baseline in the face of pain.
Which perfectly mirrors the incredible story of Philippe Petit that is mentioned in the sources. Petit is the high wire artist who famously walked on a tightrope suspended between the Twin Towers in New York.
Yeah, that's a wild story.
How does a human being conquer the paralyzing terror of stepping out into the void a quarter of a mile in the air? Petit argues that you do not conquer fear by trying to muscle through it or ignore it. You conquer fear by exaggerating it.
You build it into something so monstrous in your own mind that reality just pales in comparison.
Exactly. The text explains that Petit was deeply terrified of spiders. To cure this phobia, he didn't just slowly expose himself to small house spiders. He obsessed over them. He researched the most dangerous species, watched terrifying documentaries, and envisioned the most horrifying, delirious scenarios of being swarmed by them.
He overwhelmed his own fear response.
Yes, he built the fear up to such an astronomical peak in his imagination that when he finally encountered a real spider in waking life, it felt mundane. It was boring.
And that's what Hugard does.
Exactly. Hugard visualizes catastrophic financial devastation so that a normal trading loss feels like a minor paper cut.
If we synthesize all of this, we arrive at the core truth of his philosophy. Being the best loser doesn't mean you are simply bleeding money. It means you have learned how to lose optimally.
Optimally.
Yes, you take losses without anxiety, without the toxic need for revenge against the market, and completely devoid of ego. The optimal loser accepts they are wrong the very microsecond the environment tells them they are. They have entirely decoupled their self-worth from the concept of being right.
So, what does this all mean for you? Let's bring this all together. We started by looking at how the greatest technical skills and the fastest software in the world are utterly useless without behavioral mastery.
Totally useless.
We explored how normal human instincts, like applying a grocery store or supermarket mentality to dynamic risks and being held hostage by our brain's disproportionate fear of loss, virtually guarantee failure in any high-stakes environment.
Because your brain is working against you.
Right. To survive, you have to actively train yourself through exposure and discomfort to be an outstanding loser. You must flip the biological switch. Learn to be fearful when you are winning and hopeful only when you have cut your losses.
And achieving that requires a daily, grueling confrontation with your own hardwired nature.
I think we have covered some truly incredible ground today. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Because this isn't just about trading.
No, not at all. We spent this time talking about financial markets, but this exact psychology applies to every facet of human existence.
Absolutely. Take a hard look at your own life right now. Think about your career path, a difficult personal relationship, or, a side project that just isn't gaining traction. Where in your life are you currently applying that supermarket mentality?
Oh, that's a great question.
Where are you stubbornly holding on to a losing position, doubling down on your emotional investment out of pure ego, just hoping things will magically turn around so you don't have to face the acute pain of admitting you were wrong?
And perhaps even more importantly, where in your life are you cashing out on your winning moments way too early? Where are you playing it incredibly safe and limiting your own potential simply because you are terrified that your good luck is going to run out? Are you pulling your hand away from the stove when you should be pressing it down? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your instincts, lean into the uncomfortable, and we'll see you next time.